Hi, I'm Tony Williams with Quick Charge Power, and welcome to our weekly series of talks about electric vehicle equipment and news. This last week we learned that Volkswagen was going to spend up to $85 billion on electric vehicle charging, both for factories and new cars and all kinds of fun stuff. This week, just in the last few days, we learned that Mercedes-Benz, or Daimler, which is the parent company, is going to spend $1 billion for future electric vehicle stuff. Well, a very now famous guy, Elon Musk, tweeted that $1 billion wasn't really enough money, you should add another zero to that. And they actually responded, and the response was, yes, the actual number is 11 billion. Only 1 billion of that is for one part of the project, and 11 or 10 additional billion is for another part of the project. So quite a week for them. $11 billion isn't a huge amount of money for a company like that, but it is a lot of money to get things rolling. We also learned this week that the Governor Brown, our governor here in the state of California, called the head of the California Air Resources Board. That's our agency here in our state of California that regulates zero-emission vehicles and makes requirements for auto manufacturers to provide zero-emission vehicles in our state. And his question was, hey, how come China, that we learned last week, is considering having all the cars sold in China to be electric vehicles or zero-emission? And apparently they're now considering having some kind of change to the rules that maybe by 2030, but maybe probably more likely by about 2040 or maybe 2050, that every light-duty vehicle sold in California at least would be a zero-emission vehicle. That's in addition to what we learned last week with now Norway, of course, Germany, UK, France, some cities, major cities in the world like London and others, all looking to have these zero-emission vehicle centers. Other news we just learned today, just in the last 24 hours or so, was Dyson, the vacuum cleaner folks, which I never thought of being anything more than a vacuum cleaner company, but apparently it's quite big. They do have a bit of money, and they have decided to spend $2 billion, which is certainly a lot of money, to build an electric vehicle, and $1 billion of that $2 billion would be used to basically provide money for research and development of a solid-state battery. Other car companies have worked on this solid-state battery concept, and it's kind of a nirvana in the industry that if you could get that, we would get the economies of scale to provide mass-market electric vehicles. Tesla doesn't pursue this route openly. Obviously, everybody has to research it, but so far, it's big news, and whether they get that solid-state battery or not ready by 2020 when they thought they might be able to is yet to be seen. Toyota is also saying something around 2020 or 2021 would also have an electric vehicle, probably for the China market and maybe for California and other regulatory places that require they have an EV that would also have a solid-state battery. We also learned it seems like everybody and their brother now wants to build a battery factory or a gigafactory. Tesla made that name famous when they built a gigafactory right here in our neighboring state of Nevada. I was invited to go visit the factory when they had a big celebration there, and it is genuinely huge. I think it is officially now the largest building in North America, maybe the world, I don't know about that. But it's just gigantic and huge, and now Volkswagen and Mercedes and a bunch of others are all making noise that we're going to build these giant factories. And there won't be just one or even two, but they're talking about a whole bunch of different factories in different locations, including the United States. So that's kind of the news, that it's an amazing, another amazing week of news that seems that we're propelled quite quickly going on to a zero emission, or at least an electric powered future for transport, at least light duty transport. Tesla will unveil sometime in the next month or so their semi-truck, which all the houses that do ratings for stock and the like are all saying that they expect it to be as revolutionary as the other disruptive technologies that have happened, and stock has tumbled a little bit on traditional truck manufacturers, and Tesla once again is up. So we'll see when they release that. We're going to spend the next little bit talking about if you were to get an electric car, how do you charge that car? Now this is what our company does. We build electric vehicle charging equipment and accessories, and we want to help you understand how that might work for you. So let's say that you go down to the car dealer, maybe Nissan, and you buy the world's most famous and most sold electric vehicle, the Nissan Leaf. It just came out with a new 2018 redesigned car that you should be able to buy sometime in the spring of 2018. Spring of 2019, they're likely going to have a 225-mile version of that. But let's say you buy that car and you bring it home. How do you plug it in? Well, thankfully, the Leaf is going to come with a pretty good charging plug that will be able to plug into the wall, and you'll be able to plug it in your car. And it's called J1772 in the US, or Type 1 in Europe. It's also the same plug used in Japan. It's one of those plugs that is kind of ubiquitous around the world. And so thankfully, any car you buy in North America is going to have that plug. If you happen to buy a Tesla, the good news is every Tesla sold will come with an adapter. So just like an Apple iPhone or some other products that have a proprietary plug, you'll have an adapter that you can plug into all these J1772 plugs that are around the world. So that's the normal plug that you would use for so-called AC charging. That means the kind of electricity that comes out of your house or business. But in order to charge the battery quickly, you'll want to use a DC power source. That's direct current. And those kind of chargers tend to look like a large gas station pump, and you're going to have a big, heavy, clunky plug of some kind. For the Teslas, they're a little bit smaller, and other cars are bigger. And it'll have kind of a heavy cable, and you'll plug it in, and it'll charge the car quickly. And the number one method to do that in the world so far is a standard called CHAdeMO. It's kind of a cumbersome name, but those stations are about 16,000 in the world. They're in Japan, they're in North America, and they're in Europe. And they're also the number one quantity plug in each of those markets. So that's the one you're going to see the most. And of course, it charges the Nissan Leaf, and it charges the Tesla vehicles with a Tesla supplied adapter that costs $450. The other charging standard you're going to find is one called CCS, or sometimes it's called SAE or Combo 1. But that will charge cars that don't use the CHAdeMO standard. Primarily, those are the German cars and the more traditional American cars like General Motors and Ford. There's a similar standard, also called CCS in Europe, but it uses a different plug. The two don't interchange, unfortunately. The other third method that you'll find out and about is the Tesla Supercharger. That's also a DC fast charger. It charges your car very quickly, but it only is able to be used on a Tesla, no other cars. And finally, I'll just make a mention of there is one more standard in the world. It's only used in China, and the name of it is GBT. And if you go to China, maybe you'll see some, but you won't find them anywhere else in the world. So thanks for joining me for these few moments. I always appreciate having you stop by. And once again, I'm Tony Williams with Quick Charge Power. We'll see you next Wednesday at 2 p.m. Pacific Time and 11 a.m. Eastern Time. Thanks again.